I have a lady sitting in front of me who is Aileen Drohan, who's project leader of the Yarning Connections project at the Walton Institute at SETU. How are you? You're very welcome to the programme, Aileen.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks for having me this morning. I'm delighted to be here.
Now, when I heard about this first of all, I thought, are they just sitting there knitting jumpers with wire in them that's going to lie? I couldn't figure out what this project is about, and who better to explain what it's about than yourself. So take it away.
Okay, so the Yarning Connections project, Maria, first of all, it was funded by Science Foundation Ireland. And the project aimed to bring out a knitting and crochet booklet for e-textile patterns. So that's electronic textiles. And when we talk about electronic textiles, really, I suppose the easiest way to explain it is think of any kind of soft fabric that has circuitry in it.
Okay.
But you mentioned wire, but instead of wire, in place of wire, we use what's called conductive thread.
Oh, okay.
So it's like normal thread. I see it here in front of you there. There's a few samples there. So we use a conductive thread to make the electrical connections.
So this is the conductive. It looks like ordinary thread.
It looks like ordinary thread, but there's a metallic element in it that makes it conductive. So we set about writing patterns that would work as an introduction tool for knitters and crocheters to learn about electronic textiles and how to integrate the thread and simple components, like we have little LEDs and we have a battery holder for a coin cell battery. So the patterns have evolved over a series of workshops with local crafters.
It was like nearly 40 people involved, I think, was
We
it?
had nearly 40 people involved. So first of all, we started with workshops last May, and we had a series of workshops down in Central Library, and we had our local knitters and crocheters come in every week and experiment with the thread and integration methods with the regular yarn.
So they're just holding the ordinary yarn and the thread and knitting it like you would normally, or does it have to, how does it work?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways you can integrate the thread. You can knit directly with it. So you can use it in place of normal thread. So like when you're normally knitting and you're changing a colour, you can switch to conductive yarn.
Okay.
You could integrate it as in, like, you could just knit a piece and then you could weave the connection in through the yarn. So kind of like almost like sewing it in, really, or darning it in. You can also then work the two threads together. We found that to be the least kind of loved method, because there's a difference in the ply of the yarns don't really match. Like the regular yarn is a lot more stretchier, it's thicker compared to the conductive yarn, so it can tend to, you can lose.
This is like your tension, would it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Remember that from my
So we found different ways of working with it, and then myself and two fabulous project partners from the craft side, Jackie Kelleher and Caroline O'Toole. So Jackie was on the crochet side and Caroline was on the knitting side, and also Dr. Frances Cleary from the Walton Institute. And so together, anyway, we sat down and then took away all the workshop learnings and came up with a pattern concept based on the workshop outcomes. And I'm sitting here now with this lovely pattern that details how to make these craft objects, which I can probably
So what do they do?
So what do they do? So what the pattern does, first of all,
They're very colourful and they're
really colourful. So they're very playful items. We have two robot figures, one in crochet and one in knit. And they're just two flat 2D robot figures. So just to explain, what I'm looking at in front of me here now is the robot figure with the battery holder on the back, the snap fasteners on the head, the waist and the arms, and when the battery is turned on and
so we see lights coming on now.
You can see lights coming on. So what we have is robot figures with a range of accessories. So when you snap the accessories onto either the arms or the waist or the head, they will light. They'll light up and illuminate. The easiest way to describe it is, do you remember paper dolls from years ago?
Yeah.
So they're akin to the paper dolls paper cutout dolls with clothing that you would put on, but instead it's with knit and crochet and a range of accessories.
And this is just kind of experimenting with how to do it. What's the end game then? What, like, when you find out, and all your group who've gone through all the experiments, what's the end game for this technology?
So the end game for this technology, when you're looking at electronic textiles, future areas will include, and they do already, healthcare, sport, fitness, fashion, interior design, even anything that you can put a sensor in, you can put into a soft fabric or soft garment. So in terms of, say, healthcare, you might be looking at monitoring a patient's vital signs. You could have worker safety, say on the farm, on the field, gloves, hats that can measure or detect chemicals.
Okay.
Environmental, also, like measuring maybe like the UV and temperature. So there's a whole range of different applications for it. So the future is quite vast, and it's a growing space as well.
So the job that Yarning Connections is doing now is just kind of trialing all of this.
It's not try. No, I mean, I think the job that this is actually doing is it's working as an educational tool for knitters and crocheters, who are fabric makers at heart and really skilled in the area. And when I started looking at conductive yarn and how it's integrated in knitting and crochet, I could find very little on it. I went on to Ravelry, which is a huge database of patterns for yarn crafters. There's almost 700,000 patterns on this database, and there are downloadable patterns that craft yarners can use, and I could find next to nearly nothing on it. So it kind of set me thinking that really and truly integration of conductive yarn with knit and crochet has been predominantly in the industry or research space, and there's nothing out there for people to learn about how to use it, and just a basic introduction. And that's what this pattern serves to do. It serves to give a basic introduction. What is conductive yarn? What are the components you're integrating them? How do you integrate them? It explains all the little bits you need to know. What is the polarity of an LED, the positive and negatives, how to connect those to the batteries, what resistance is, what is the difference between conductive thread and normal thread, how it works, how the circuit works.
And did the participants find it interesting?
They loved it, yeah. Absolutely. We had, not only did we have the workshop participants in May, Maria, but we went on, after we had kind of written our first draft pattern, we then recruited a number of pattern testers to test the pattern and to give us feedback on it. And that was a really exciting phase, because it was great to see they were able to make the pieces from the draft pattern that we had written up, even though we had mistakes in it at that stage, which we had to correct later. But that's all part of the process, But they were able to make the pieces, and in actual fact even troubleshoot some of the mistakes that we had in it. So I was thrilled with that, absolutely delighted.
Because when you think of knitting and crochet, it's as far from science and technology as you can get, technically speaking, isn't it? Until now.
It is, technically speaking, but I think in some ways, because they read patterns, and there is a certain technical side to it as well. But not all knitters and crocheters read patterns. That's the other thing I learned, is that a lot of knitters and crocheters, not a lot, but some of them will only kind of work freehand,
Oh, really?
So yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah, so to kind of accommodate that side of it, we've a lot of step-by-step visuals in the pattern as well, and diagrams and circuit diagrams, and so we're hoping that people will be able to pick it up from all angles.
So is this
they can
open
read
to anybody now, or
absolutely? The pattern
can they get
is
this book, or
so the booklets, the hard printed booklets are they're kind of like gold dust now, Maria. We've only a few of them, but we do have the pattern available for download.
Okay.
And people can go on to the Walton Institute website. So it's waltoninstitute.ie /projects /yarning-connections. And they'll see the pattern image, the front page, the pattern on that, and if they click on that, you'll be able to start the download.
And where do they get the
so all of these
wires,
the fancy wires and the little components,
conductive thread.
There's a lot of different suppliers, Maria, out there, and to be honest, you're looking at online purchases for them, and they tend not to be in high street retail stores. So a lot of electronic hobbyist stores will do them, specified electronic stores. But the easiest way would be just to Google the component and see what comes up, in your search field. So there are a lot of different suppliers, and also the little lily pad components we're using. Some of these are also available as generic versions, because that technology itself is open sourced. And then the thread, equally, there's a few different threads out there. We haven't detailed every single type of thread you can use, and markets change. But what we have in the book is we have the instructions on what you need to look out for when you're purchasing a conductive yarn. And that's the other thing, because there's a huge difference between conductive yarn and metallized or metallic yarn. You can see, you could put in a search for metallic yarn and you'll get all these different yarns up, but appearances can be deceiving, and some of those might not be conductive at all. So we have all of that detailed in the booklet.
Do these do anything else other than light up? Is there any? These ones that we have.
These ones here, all they do is light up. But what we have done, Maria, or the beauty about, I think, the way we've created this is because the base. The base, I know, they're so adorable. Because the base acts as an open circuit. Once you have your base made with your little snap fasteners here and here, you can design and create anything to fit onto this.
Okay.
So the hope is that, people will take it and experiment. We're really encouraging that experimentation. And also, they're the same size, you'll notice. So the knitting pieces will work on the crochet body and vice versa. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And we have, and just to explain what these little pieces are, so we have a little superhero cape that can snap onto the head. We have his little alien friend as well that you can carry around. We have a lighter.
These are okay to give your kids, aren't they? Like, they're not going to...
I wouldn't give them to a very small child because of the small parts in it. But most certainly, I think, I think children will really enjoy these as well. And we in actual fact, during our...
And how long will that stay lit now?
So it depends. There's a few things that you need to consider. One, how many pieces you have connected to it, because the more you have, the more you're going to drain your battery.
Well, if the child was going to school in the morning, would that help with visibility? Or would it stay that long? Or
it would.
It would.
It would. Yeah, absolutely. It's not going to die
or on a pair of
in an hour or two. Like, no. But it does depend on the number of pieces you have, and also then depends on, some of the pieces have one light, some have 2 LEDs, so it depends on a lot of things.
Tell them how they can download the pattern again if they're interested.
So you can go to waltoninstitute.ie/projects/yarning-connections.
Excellent. Well, you've explained that very well, despite your nerves coming in the door. Okay. I told you knew about it, and I didn't. Aileen, thanks a million for coming in.
Thank you, Maria. Thanks for having me this
Aileen Drohan there, project leader of the Yarning Connections project at the Walton Institute, and that is at SETU.